Hi, what's up guys? Today we're going to be focusing in on how to ace a job interview. So I'm going to give you 10 tips that you can use to make sure you're on the hiring manager's shortlist by the time you're out of the room. So first up on our list is to do the practice interviews. You actually have a lot of opportunity to do this. When I take up my workshops, they would be actual interviews that recruiters might ask to perform. The practice interviews with any student that sign up actually helps build them their confidence in answering in actual interviews. Now these interviews are not real, but they are real enough to provide a lot of practice conversations with the hiring managers. The main benefit of these type of interviews is that they are great practice for the real thing, because an interview is inherently a nerve-wracking experience, as we all know. So if you have some time to go in and do practice interviews where the stakes aren't so high, you're going to be able to come into the real thing with a lot more confidence and a lot more polish, right? So tip number 2 is to be as friendly and as engaged with everyone that you interact with in the company. Now, I don't think people are going into the companies and being downright rude to the people around them or telling them that they don't want to talk to them, but indirectly they are telling them with the help of the smartphones. They take this whenever they have a little bit of time to wait for their interview, they take out their smartphones and then they sit and stare at their phones instead of talking to people. So I can tell you from my experience that people who are not the hiring managers still do observe the behavior of potential candidates, and then they talk to those hiring managers, right? So be very careful. A lot of times they are going to ask anybody who talked to the potential candidate if they have any objections. So if you come into a company and you have a few minutes before the interview, I urge you to spend some time talking to the person at the front desk, or if they are busy, at least be really polite, greet them, ask them how their day is going, and then sit down and do your waiting. Also, don't carry your smartphone, carry a book. Just don't take out your smartphones. Just take out your book and start reading. The next tip that I'm going to talk about is the tip number 3, which is be prepared for the interview, the questions that they're going to ask. So interview is a situation where you're supposed to answer the interviewer's questions, because they are figuring out if you're the best candidate for the job, whether you're the best cultural fit, whether you're the best or not. So they try to figure out if the job is right for your skill set or not. So additionally, coming to the interview prepared with your own questions tells the interviewer that you are engaged, you are interested in the position, and that you put in a little bit of preparation when it comes to attending the job interview, right? So while you might think that having no questions might seem like you know everything, and maybe that is a good thing in some way, but what it actually does is makes the interviewer wonder if you are actually not empathetic about the position, or you're not interested in the position, or maybe you're just doing it for the money, right? So one question you should definitely keep in your mind is that what are the opportunities available for advancement, or what are the additional duties I'm going to have to perform at the company. The great thing is this kind of question tells your interviewer that you're willing to be adaptable and flexible, and you're willing to learn new things, and that's a great quality to have in somebody that you are employing if you're a business owner, right? So related to my third tip on asking questions during the interview, tip number 4 is to research the company before you walk into that interview. So it's very essential to do your research before you get into any company. So once again, this shows a level of preparation and dedication, and a lot of other candidates are not going to do, and this is going to help you to stand apart from others. Now, I know what you're thinking. What kind of research am I going to do, Sushma? Well, you can do a little bit of preliminary research on the history of the company and its businesses, right, where it originated and other details, what you really want to understand, what the culture is like, what people tend to do there, and what your actual position, intended position usually is expecting you to do. Now on the general position and duties aside, there are tons of websites on the internet, so I recommend just googling and find out more about the company, right? For example, the individual company, you can use the sites like Glassdoor and Vault to get reviews from actual employees and get a little bit of feel for what the company's culture is like, right? So you can do these things. Alright, we are on to step number 5, which is to bring a notebook and a pen to the interview with you. Doing this is yet another signal that you are dedicated and are detail oriented, because you are able to actually take notes on the details of the position during the interview, but it also allows you to come prepared with some pre-written notes about the company's history or the questions that you might have to ask. Right? You should also bring a couple of copies of your resume just in case it becomes useful during the course of the conversation, and if it has to escalate it. And if you happen to be applying for a position where examples of your work would be useful, bring those along as well. So tip number 6 is send thank you notes or thank you emails within 24 hours of your interview. Now I say thank you notes or thank you emails because in my mind the time is of the essence here, and in a lot of cases it's pretty difficult to get an actual physical handwritten note to your interviewer. So especially if the building that you went to the interview in is a little far away from where you are, so it becomes a little difficult. So in those cases a thank you email works pretty well. Have the ability to give an actual handwritten thank you note, and it's within 24 hours or maybe within 48 hours at the very least, then actually can add a nice touch. It should also be noted, and yes, that was a pun, you shouldn't limit your thank you notes or thank you emails just to the interviewer. If you interacted with a secretary during the time at the building, or you actually got into tour of the building, or you talked to somebody about the job that you're doing and you got a referral, so you should be thanking them as well by sending them thank you emails, and it really goes a long way. Next is tip number 7 is what to wear to the interview. A well-tailored suit is the best thing that you could do. You have to be in your business formal attire. Now I do have to make a slight admission here, making you wear an actual suit to go into interviews rather than just regular business formal attire. But if you don't happen to have a suit and you can't afford one, you can definitely wear a button-down shirt with a nice tie and a nice pair of slacks. If you're a girl, then definitely dresses that fit the business formal requirement, or you can go with something like a dress skirt, or you can go with like a skirt, blazer and such other outfits. But you have to make sure that you're dressed for success in the situation, and no one is exception to this. Recommendation is, if you're specifically told not to wear a suit, they specifically tell you, then they say that casually come to the interview wearing a t-shirt, and hey, just show up in a t-shirt and jeans. That's completely alright according to the culture of the company, then that's completely okay. But otherwise you have to fit into the business formal attire, and that's the ultimate, right? So that is what is tip number 7 talking about. Tip number 8 is to be prepared for the behavioral interview questions. These are the kinds of questions that ask you to tell a story about your previous work experience that demonstrates how you have handled the situations and what you learned in the process and improved upon. Some examples of these kind of questions include: tell me about a time when you were in a high pressure situation and how you responded. Or give me an example of a time when you didn't meet a goal that you had set and how did you deal with it. Or tell me about a time you had a chaotic situation at your workplace and how did you deal with it. And a lot many more on these lines. So the best way to handle these kind of questions is to look at the examples of them beforehand and to think of stories from your past working life that would fit into these scenarios, right? And crucially, the stories you pick should be crafted in a way that demonstrates how you learned or improved in some way or the other. that's relevant to the skill that you're showing and that's relevant to the job. Now keep in mind that you don't need a specific story for every possible interview question that could come out, because one thing is that is impossible, and two, when you have a few stories and you have practiced them, they are gonna be pretty adaptable and you're gonna be able to apply them to a wide variety of different scenarios on different questions. Alright, we're on to tip number 9, which is actually my one of the personal favorites. I would say view the interview for exactly what it is. A conversation between two parties who have things to exchange. The reason this tip is on the list is because a lot of students go into interviews feeling like they are going into an audience with a king, or they are going into some royal conversation and they would be granted the job because of the mercy of the king or queen. So that's definitely not the case, and that should not be exactly going through like that. So remember, companies, they put a lot of time and effort and money into attracting the best possible talent. That's when they live and die by. So believe that you are the best possible person for the job and let that be communicated in the interview. Don't be arrogant or don't be overly cocky, but be confident. Finally, our last tip on the list is that 15 minutes early is on time and on time is late. Like, here's the thing, you want a bit of buffer time when you walk into the company's doors, just in case they happen to be ready for you right now. You don't want to be coming in 30 seconds late just because you got stuck in traffic. So plus, showing up a little bit early makes a really good first impression, and it gives you an opportunity to potentially network with the person running the front desk or some other people at the company before you get into the interview. That also relaxes you when you talk to other people. So these are the top 10 tips for helping you ace your next interview. Though the interview is only half the battle won, the best way to ensure that you are hiring the manager's number one pick is to do everything you can to be able to building skills and experience that sets you apart from the competition. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching. If you found this video useful, you can hit that like button and subscribe